All right.
Okay, welcome everyone to a wonderful Friday Facts, but a special Friday Facts for Black History Month. And I'll stand up because you can't see it. AARP created this wonderful t-shirt for Black History Month, and I put it on. And for those of you who have it too, realize, yeah, it's the back of the shirt, but it's so pretty. I put the back on the front. And it's just really exciting to all be together. I don't even want to be my typical chatty self because we have Deryl Davis Fulmer here, has so much to share with us. I want to turn it over. I will say that, as I always do, I stalk our wonderful guests. And Dr. Fulmer, I love how your friends, your colleagues at the North Carolina Retired Governmental Employees Association, I love your bio there. It shares, because I had put one together and then they said it even better. They said, I like how they put Deryl spent 30 plus years at colleges and universities in Wisconsin and North Carolina. I noticed all of your amazing experience as an administrator and adjunct faculty at a number of universities. While at the University of Wisconsin, she even wrote a book chapter with her University of Wisconsin colleagues on prison education. Here, let's let folks in. And Deryl joined the NCRGEA in July 2019 after retiring from the North Carolina community colleges. What she enjoys most is hearing about the experiences of state and local government retirees who dedicate their lives to service. The best part, she says, is how North Carolina retirees continue to be active and engaged, leaving legacies of care and greatness across the state. Despite her many achievements, Deryl rarely uses her hard-earned title of doctor. We decided to add it for her, and clearly I am doing that now as well. Dr. Deryl Davis Fulmer, thank you to Friday Facts. I'm going to turn it over to you because people keep joining, and I know you have so much to share with your words and with you have a PowerPoint to share and a movie. So
yes. Good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to see everyone here on a Friday morning, 8:30. I would probably be just crawling out of bed normally because I don't, work full time, which I keep telling Mary I'm part-time. It's great to see all of you. I'm going to show a bit of a film that let me see if I can get it going, that some of you have already seen, but I just want to show this trailer because we're talking about serious illness in this particular coalition, and the film just kind of sets the early foundation. So many of you have seen it more than once, so I'm sorry about that.
But can't see it too much. So
yeah, you can't see it too much. And so let me see. I think I can manage to do. Oh, I did.
You
I managed to do this. Okay. See if I can get it started. Wait. And can you all hear it?
For most of America's history, a system of racial segregation dictated every aspect of life. In no area was this more true than in healthcare.
You think about the Civil Rights Movement, you think about housing, public accommodation, education. But I think the story hasn't been told often about what happened in terms of the institutions of medicine. So that's an unrevealed part of the history.
In 1965, as the civil rights struggle escalated, Black Americans were in the streets fighting for justice and equality. They were being attacked and killed. But a different kind of violence was taking thousands of Black lives every year. Segregated medical care was a brutal reality for Black Americans.
Negroes had one ward. If you were dying from cancer, if you were there to have a baby or whatever, you're on the same ward.
Everything was segregated. Not just the hospitals, but physicians' practices. I was the only Black pediatrician in the entire state.
People were dying as a result of that segregated system.
The 1964 Civil Rights Act tied federal funds to desegregation. Now Medicare, with its promise of federal funds, created an opportunity to end the shocking inequalities in medical care. This is the remarkable story of how civil rights activists and the federal government, working together, desegregated thousands of hospitals practically overnight, bringing life-saving care to millions of Americans. This little-known story reveals the role of countless people who never took center stage, but whose shoulders we stand on.
All right. Thank you for my screen is kind of, okay, bearing with me on that. So I want you, I've got to get it off, don't I?
No, that's good. We see you now. I know you'll pull up your PowerPoint in a second, but thank you for sharing that. And
Oh, let's see, here we go. All right.
yeah, Dr. Fulmer has all kinds of, we have the movie promo and then she created these great slides. So you're wonderful for sharing that. How many of you have seen that before? I had seen it. And then the full movie is really powerful. And you know what I'm going to do right now is add the link in the chat.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. I appreciate that. So let me share. Let me just start off with
I don't think you can see the movie without it's got restrictions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
What
that
I just
So-
realized that, and there's ways that we can create an event. Dr. Fulmer has connected me with one of the distributors in the state, so we can figure out how to show it.
right. We can get it. I actually talked with or text or email with Rosalie Calerco, and she still has the contact, and we can make that happen if anybody wants to see the full movie. So I want you to think about this while we are going through my little tiny PowerPoint this morning. I just pulled some things together because it seemed like there's quite a bit going on right now, and a number of things going on in North Carolina as well as in the nation and across the world that are causing a lot of noise. And it seems like a lot of the progress that was made earlier is subject to being undone. And some of it, including hospitals, are now doing different things. And sometimes the people who live in those areas have to drive a long ways to get services. I know that I lived in Halifax County for a few years while I was at both Halifax Community College and Martin Community College. And oftentimes when I would say I need to have some such and such done, everyone would say, well, you have to go to Raleigh for that. Or you have to do something, you have to drive a long ways. So before desegregation happened, people would have to drive a long ways in order to get the services that they need. And my brother, I mentioned this last week at the serious illness, I think, and I were talking late last week, and he had mentioned to me that he had hit his head when he was a little kid. He was probably about 6. And we had to take him to the hospital that would accept Blacks. And it was Lincoln here in Durham. And we couldn't go to the other hospital. And I remember being in Fayetteville, and we had to always go through the back door, and all of that. So I lived during Jim Crow. So we learned how to behave, if you will, during Jim Crow so that we could keep ourselves safe and be okay when we went places. So I'm telling you a little bit about me and during the civil rights movement. So we got started in the movement really early. I was about 10, but my father went to school with Martin Luther King. They graduated, or they worked on their doctorates together at Boston University. It was 7 Black students there in the PhD program. And you're talking about 1947, 48, 49. He graduated in 53. And so they became good friends. So King was a friend of the family. He did come visit us. We called him, my mother said we always jumped on him and called him the Alabama man when we were really little. And so we knew him. The problem with me, I didn't know he was famous until I was about 26. And when I realized, oh my goodness, I know one of the most famous people in the whole wide world. But he was part of, our lives, along with several other people in the movement. This picture on the right of my screen is a mural in Durham at the Durham Arts Council. My father is actually, I don't know if you can see this, he's in a row there on the end. His name was Reverend Dr. Grady Davis, and he pastored Union Baptist Church. And Union Baptist was really one of the centers of the movement, along with White Rock Baptist Church in the Durham area. Floyd McKissick and his family were members of Union Baptist, and many of you have heard of him. Floyd McKissick Sr. was head of the Congress on Racial Equality, short for CORE, during the movement. And so we were all involved all kinds of ways. So as soon as we moved to Durham, my father put us in an elementary school. I was in 5th grade, and I was in a classroom all by myself. So we were part of the 11 students who desegregated the schools in Durham. There's some efforts going on now to try to capture all of that history. So you may be hearing a little bit more about that in months to come. But I spent most of my childhood in desegregation, including college. My father said, no, you're not done yet. So you can't go to Howard like I wanted to. And so I went to Chapel Hill instead. But so I was in marches. I've seen the Ku Klux Klan. We've been in front of them, seen the crosses burning, scary as I don't know what. We just kind of seen it. And my father actually was involved with the Selma March. He went down to help King and got himself arrested. We didn't know that he was alive until several days later, and found out he had been placed in jail. But eventually in 1985, WRAL did a story on my dad and flew him down to Selma to recreate the march. And the person who put him in jail in 1960, I think it was 1965, actually gave him the key to the city of Selma in 1985. It was phenomenal. And so we've had some good experiences. We've had some terrible experiences. We've learned a lot. We've had to make ourselves safe. My father's had to hire security. He built everything in our house so that we wouldn't have to go out to have recreation, those kind of things. And we as kids didn't think a whole lot of it, but it was really important work. And so I'm happy just to share that tiny bit with you. But for sure, with education actually, and desegregation actually happens because of where you live. Most of the time, children go to school in their neighborhoods. So when desegregation happened, children particularly Black students, had to move out, had to go outside of their neighborhoods in order to be educated, because most of the Black schools were either eliminated, and a lot of the Black teachers were maybe placed somewhere else, but maybe did not have a job because of it. So desegregation, while it was great because we're in a place now where we can go anywhere we want, and we can go to any school we would like to go to. But as you have noticed in the news and everywhere else, we're still having problems. There are still problems all over the world. We have to be careful. My husband and I really make sure that we know where we're going. If we're separated, we don't go out, too late at night, just try to be safe. But everybody has to be safe now, because I can tell you, driving is not fun anymore. And you probably all run into drivers that don't know how to drive lately. But at one point, we were a little nervous living here in Durham. And we just moved back just before COVID shut everything down in February of 2020. We moved back to Durham. And so there's still issues that we are facing. Some of them are a little bit different than they used to be, but nonetheless the same. And we all know that if laws were made that they can also be unmade. And that was evident by Roe v. Wade that just happened a few months ago. So we're all being very cognizant about the things that are happening in the news, the way people are handling different situations, because we certainly don't want the Civil Rights Act of 1965 to be, to disappear, if you will. Let me see, how do I get out of this? This is kind of what I'm gonna talk about a little bit. All right. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about equity and aging. Some of you may have seen some of this data, but I just want to share with you that that film really, to me, put it in perspective as to why things had happened earlier. Because as a kid growing up in Jim Crow, I didn't know any different. It was the way we had to live. So it wasn't odd until it wasn't. And so we are still having a lot of issues. Fewer Blacks, 58%, and Hispanic, 58% adults, think their local area does a good job providing access to resources like high quality healthcare. Blacks, 56%, and Hispanics, 54%, adults are less likely to find it easy to access community services that are respectful of their cultural background compared with white adults. And just 65% of Hispanic adults report that healthcare providers can address their needs most of the time, compared to 80% of white. And then we talk about the LGBTQ plus. That's a whole interesting topic in and of itself. And in the Black community, LGBTQ have not been readily accepted because of how the Bible has been interpreted. And it's hard for the Black community to accept this different way of living. So we have, and it's not a new phenomenon. It's been around. LGBTQ plus folks have been around forever. And so we are paying attention now, but not in the best way. So older LGBTQ, I'm going to see if I can minimize my picture so I can read, who are living, face higher rates of social isolation and poverty, as well as lack of access to culturally competent services and supports. And they are 2 times as likely to be single and live alone, 4 times less likely to have children, and more likely to face poverty and homelessness and have poor physical, mental health. And then the older adults, let me just share this. I do have an LGBTQ son, and one time he was driving from New York by himself, and my daughter and I stayed up until he got home because we were nervous, because number one, he was Black, and number two, he was LGBTQ. And we were concerned completely about his safety as he was driving along the highway. He got lost and we didn't know what happened to him, but I mean, he's safe now. He doesn't even live in this country because of issues that have occurred, and he feels like he has a better life elsewhere. But it was hard trying to raise a Black child, period, especially male, even as they were coming up. My children were born in the 70s. Okay, so 55% of rural Americans, and I'm just sharing that with you, indicate that the economy is only fair or poor and contributes to a larger issue of financial insecurity. And you know what? That affects healthcare. I've had people say, well, I have to make a decision between whether I buy my medication or, whether I buy grocery or something like that. And I was talking to my stepson last night, and I was saying, well, why is this happening? The economy in general is showing that it's better. And his comment was, it depends on who you talk with. And I told him he's exactly right. Okay, the issue is more striking for Black, 68%, Latinx, 62%, communities in rural areas as compared to 45% of whites in rural areas. So we're not saying that it doesn't happen to everyone. It's just more concentrated in the Black and brown communities. 31% of rural Americans with disabilities indicate they frequently feel lonely or isolated. Last week, as we were talking a bit, Mary Stover Williams mentioned social determinants of health. That's so critically important because that's all about where you live and the environment that you come from. So if you live in an environment that's toxic, if you live in an environment where you are lonely and isolated, if you live in an environment where everyone is poor, and if you live in an environment where there's not good health care, you're going to have issues. So what it looks like with disability and chronic disease, 81% have one or more chronic disease, 35% have a disability, 31% reported more than one fall, and falls prevention is really critical, and 8% reported that their health was poor. And you see some of the other data on the side of this screen. I'm just giving you a snapshot. Older adults of color are more likely to experience declining health and at an earlier age than older adults who are white. Diabetes and cardiovascular disease are twice as prevalent in adults of color, and the socioeconomic disparities aggravate a poor quality of life. More than 13% of Black and 10% of Hispanic adults live with fair or poor health across the United States, which only exacerbates as they age. And the reason this is so very important because a lot of Black and brown people don't talk about their health issues. So a lot of us with our social organizations and fraternities and sororities are trying to get people to talk about it. And we're holding more health fairs that you might see Black wellness listed at the top so that we can encourage people to come and let's talk about diabetes. Let's talk about your cardiovascular disease. Let's give you the signs to watch for. Let's talk about prostate cancer, which, men don't like to talk about that anyway. And in the Black community, it's almost a no-no, a taboo. And I know when I was growing up, we just didn't talk about those things because they were not things you talk about. My father happened to be a psychologist by training or by his studies. He was a social psychologist and a pastor. So he taught us to think about our mental health as well as our physical health. So we had a different thing going on in my household. But as I grew up, I understood that people didn't talk about this. So we're still in that same state. It's happening a little bit better, but folks don't like to talk about it. And when you don't talk about it, you don't know. Because if you live in communities and you're associating with folks who know X and not Y, all you are going to know is X. And I found that to become very clear in my dissertation when I asked a racial question to my respondents in my dissertation. It was about literacy. And I said, well, do you feel the racial, I forgot the exact question, but do you feel the racial impact? I didn't use those words. But the response was, no, I never tried to bust into the elite group. So he was leveled. His information, everything that he knew was at a certain level, and that was it. And so if the teacher told him to drop out of school and he would only dig graves for his life, that's what they would do. Those students would do. So and this was in 1995, I did my dissertation, but I can tell you right now, we're still dealing with some of these issues. So let's talk about the Health Equity Committee, as this all relates to, it may not feel like it, but to me, it all relates. I have to look at the situation we're in the United States, in North Carolina, and the world as relatable. All of it relates to one another. As we're having trouble elsewhere, we're having similar trouble somewhere else. It may look different, but we have to handle it in a way that helps us to understand that there still is hope maybe for a different result that we have. So the Health Equity Committee was started, I don't remember when, Mary, but maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, something like that. Okay. And it came about from the board of the North Carolina Coalition on Aging, which I now do serve on the board. And then I chair the Health Equity Committee right now. So we had a purpose to identify documentable disparities based on research, analysis, and reporting. And what we went through a process, and then what we decided to do was select specific areas of disparity to recommend for action by the coalition based on members' interests, investigations, and evidence. And that turned out very nicely. So I'm going to just share what we are doing in the rural area. We're working on direct care issues around the workforce and how it impacts health equity in rural North Carolina communities. With the BIPOC, and some of you were at the meeting last week where Mary shared some information about the BIPOC group, the Black, Indigenous, people of color, and the use of tobacco and tobacco cessation. That's really important. And we're trying to figure out ways to address that. The other issue that we are working on and will be working on is the acknowledgement of historical racial biases and its impact on current and persistent health disparities. I mentioned to you earlier about Jim Crow. That's what that's about. LGBTQ plus, bridging the gap between the LGBTQ plus senior population and the healthcare system, and disabilities intersect across all the areas of work there. So then the coalition has been involved with all ages and all stages, and Mary is here, and she has just been a godsend for all the work that we have been doing across all the areas of all ages, all stages. But I feel privileged and honored that she was one of my steering committee members and champions for the committee that I chaired. But just briefly, I just wanted to share with you the kinds of issues that we're working on. And they were divided into 4 domains. And all ages, all stages is a multi-sector aging plan that we're working on statewide. And it's a roadmap for aging and living well. So Mary, if you ever want to jump into whatever I'm saying, you're free to do so. But the 4 domains are strengthening communities for a lifetime, optimizing health and well-being, supporting older adults and their families, and affording aging. And so as you can read what is written over there, I just copied and pasted what it is all about. But what I want to make sure that you know is all ages, all stages, North Carolina recognizes the diverse needs and aspirations of North Carolina residents or North Carolina's residents, offering a roadmap that promotes holistic well-being, equitable access to services, and vibrant community engagement. So we have included diversity or equity throughout our entire process, recognizing that it just cannot be adjunct, if you will, outside of and then thought of later to the process. I specifically work with and co-led with Janice Tyler, if some of you know her from the Orange County Department of Aging, Strengthening Communities for a Lifetime. And in Strengthening Communities for a Lifetime, these are all the areas we worked on: housing and universal design. And housing also included the unhoused, so homelessness, transportation accessibility. And that includes walking, biking, whatever, driving, older adults driving. And this is all ages. So we were trying to also be cognizant of the fact that whatever we do should include and be inclusive of the older adults. And many of us focus sometimes specifically on that. And then we would think, oh no, we need to really focus on everybody. So we're hoping that all of the recommendations that we came up with will be beneficial for everyone. And specifically for those who are aging. Community safety and protection. The adult protective services were included in that work as well. Emergency preparedness when we have disasters also included. Social connection, inclusion, and broadband. And as I mentioned earlier in one of my slides, how social connection could really lead to bad health that Social connection is one of those social determinants too, I think, Heather, because if people are lonely, disease could occur. They could have diabetes. They could end up with heart disease. They could end up really just in really bad shape. No food. And food, is another, food security and nutrition is another area that's really important, because without food, we really can't live. And a lot of people are living that way. I deliver and my husband and I deliver with Meals on Wheels, and we see it. Sometimes we're the only people that individuals may talk to in a day. So while Meals on Wheels delivers food, they also help with connecting people. And sometimes you get a story. Sometimes you may get a picture that someone has drawn and they want to share it with you and give it to you. And so it's important to understand where people are still in 2024. And then we embedded environmental sustainability like broadband, et cetera, throughout our entire process. So you'll be hearing more about that later as we move forward. Mary, did you want to add anything? Okay. She doesn't, so she's
You
saying I did
did a great
okay.
job. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
I think what
And you-
Daryl, everybody can see is you got your fingers in a lot of stuff.
I do, and then NCRGA, I didn't talk about that, but we have 67,000 members across the state of North Carolina, retired governmental employees who worked in public service in the state or either in local government in their counties. And all of these things that I talked about affect all of our retirees across the state. The difference is they have a pension, small or large. And those with the smaller pensions, I think we have quoted that the average in our association may be something like, it was 19,000, but I think it's grown to like 21,000 a year. How do you live comfortably on 21,000 a year? So some are using Meals on Wheels. I had a woman to contact me the other day because we're trying to connect our members to volunteer for Meals on Wheels, but she contacted me and said, I need Meals on Wheels, and so I receive it. And we have a lot of our members like that. So what we're trying to do is make sure we provide our members and equip our members with information. So we have webinars and different things that we offer to help them understand, say like diabetes or Alzheimer's or caregiving, taxes, Social Security, all of those things, living, aging, unlonely. And so we've been working diligently to provide our members with a different service to help them and educate them about how to age gracefully in North Carolina. Because as you saw in some of my first slides, we're growing in the aging area. I think by 2040, we should have about 2.8 million 65 plus in North Carolina. People are moving in. They like this state, and the ones who are here staying. And they're moving into various counties, so we have data about all of that as well. But anyway, I'm done. So did I make a half hour?
You did
Ooh.
great. And I'll let you close your slides so that way we
Yeah.
can do a little bit bigger. We have just another moment left. I know we're going over a little bit, but
Yeah.
Dr. Fulmer, I don't even know. This was as we knew, this was just a teaser conversation. There's so many things to dive into. Your sharing of your experiences growing up in the civil rights movement and being on the forefront of the desegregation work. Both in the education system and healthcare and communities, and then how you continue that work through the Coalition on Aging with health equity, through the state's work with all ages, all stages, through your own organizations. I'm just in awe, and I can't thank you enough. It's like my own question is, how do you stay motivated doing all of this work for so many years?
Yeah. You know what? I always feel that if you're gonna have a mouth about what's going on, you need to be active in it. You need to, be involved. You just can't sit back and then complain. But it's rewarding for me because we have made some progress. But you know, as much as I want to like sit back and just relax, I always think, and my husband does the same thing, we always talk about this, we need to still be involved because things are still happening. I think part of it is because of the way I was taught
Yes.
to negotiate the world. That you see, I had to live in two worlds being involved in the movement. I had to become really white when I mean, all the white culture, I know white. I had to learn it because in order to be successful and to survive in the school by yourself, you know, in classes, you had to be and speak the language there. And then you had to go home to your own culture and churches. You know, I said my dad was a pastor and he pastored a large church, you know, and be there. And so you had to be in two worlds. So I've always kind of been in two worlds, at least.
Well, and I didn't mean to interrupt before. You are doing your parents proud. I know your father, the Reverend Dr. Davis, I know he was honored throughout the state, but I think you honor him every day with the work that you're doing. There is so much love happening on the chat line. I know we have to end in just a moment. I think
Yeah.
Charlotte Sweeney said it just really beautifully. Deryl, thank you so much for your energy and your work. You are contagiously inspirational, embodying that hope we all can use in these times. Keep up your good
Appreciate
job.
it.
I love that. So
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for listening to me for a whole half an hour.
thank you so much. And there's other really Miss Williams, my love is going out to you and what you're sharing with your experiences.
Mhm.
So, you know, there's a lot happening and there's a lot of trauma that people are still living through based on what happened in the past and what's still happening now. And
Yes.
I love your point. If you have a mouth about something, you gotta do something about it. I know we went on a little more.
I'm
I am
sorry.
so excited you are in our circle. Dr. Deryl Davis Fulmer, thank you. And thank you all. I know there's other meetings today you're going off.
Yes.
Everybody's keeping up good trouble today. So
Yes, that's a good way to say that.
all right, thank you all so much. We'll end the official show, but people can continue. Take care.
Appreciate it. Thank you all. Have a good day. Happy Friday.